Beijing and Moscow are set to ramp up their strategic coordination as China's top diplomat heads to Russia for a 4-day visit to talk security. This trip is the latest in a series of high-level visits and phone calls that have taken place between the two sides. His trip was confirmed just hours after he wrapped up what Beijing described as, quote, open, substantive and constructive strategic negotiations with U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan. Mr. Wang is scheduled to meet his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, with the war in Ukraine and stability in the Asia-Pacific on the agenda. China has offered diplomatic and trade support to Moscow during the war in Ukraine, but stopped short of providing military support. The two countries, however, have carried out joint sea and air patrols in recent months. President Xi Jinping has also made a state visit to Moscow in March, declaring that relations with Russia were entering a new era. Reports are saying that Vladimir Putin will head to Beijing in October for the next Belt to Road Forum. Now, Mr. Putin is not known to travel outside the country since the International Criminal Court issued an arrest warrant against him on grounds of illegally deporting hundreds of children from Ukraine. For more, Dasha Chernysheva joins us. She's live in Moscow. Dasha, Wang Yi's trip is the latest in a series of visits to the country by Chinese officials. What can we expect from this?
Well, that's right. From the words of the Russian Foreign Ministry, the sides will have a substantive exchange of the views on the international agenda. They will be strengthening their cooperation on all of those international issues as part of the so-called no-limits partnership that has been declared by Moscow and Beijing earlier. We also understand that the sides will be exchanging their views on the issues related to the settlement in Ukraine, as well as on the situation in Asia-Pacific. Moscow has repeatedly been saying and thanking China for the balanced approach to the conflict in Ukraine, and we also understand from the Chinese side that the foreign minister of the country will also be having strategic security consultations at the invitation of Nikolai Patrushev, who is the secretary of Russia's Security Council. So the whole host of issues, be it on the international affairs as well as in the security, which is inevitably related to that, will be discussed in Moscow. But of course, the understanding is that this is the visit a part of the preparation for the meeting or at the highest level. Russian President Vladimir Putin is expected to travel to China in the course of the coming months. We don't have the date for that yet, but certainly the Kremlin has confirmed that this meeting is being in the making. And we have seen an exchange of the trips by the officials of these two countries. Most recently, Li Shangfu, China's defense minister, traveled to Russia as well as to Belarus. We have seen Xi Jinping traveling to Moscow earlier this year, and the understanding is that indeed this visit will be beefing up the bilateral ties, which the countries say are at the highest level ever.
Dasha, what can we make of the significance of the timing of Mr. Wang's trip to Moscow right now?
Well, certainly when you look at the international agenda and what has been happening and what will be happening, you can see that there has been a very detailed exchange of the delegations and the visits by the officials from both sides. Now, we have seen the meeting between Russian President Vladimir Putin and the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un taking place at the Vostochny Cosmodrome in Russia's Far East. Now, this meeting is expected to be discussed in the talks between the foreign ministers. So Russia is ready to brief its Chinese partners with regards to what has been discussed. And Moscow has been saying that they are aiming for the creation of the so-called triangle between Moscow, North Korea and China when it comes to trade, for instance. So we've seen also the Chinese foreign minister Wang Yi traveling and meeting with the U.S. officials. And that is also very important because Russia has been accusing the West and particularly the United States of their support to Ukraine, which according to Moscow Moscow is only funneling the conflict, is only extending that, and is encouraging Kiev to continue. So certainly the agenda is very saturated. We also see the UN General Assembly taking place very, very shortly. And this is where the Russian foreign minister will also be taking part, delivering the speech. So certainly the agenda is very saturated, and we understand that all of those issues that have been raised before have to be coordinated between the foreign ministers of Moscow and Beijing so that they can sort of check the clocks.
All right, Dasha, thank you for that update. Dasha Chernyshova there live for us in Moscow.